This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 452 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Total Saddle Fit. Tonight we have dressage judge and trainer Ann Cizadlo. She's going to give us some great tips on test riding. Heidi Basler is back talking about amateur CDI classes. And Reese and I are going to address some dressage controversy in the trainer tip.
Stanfield from Loxahatchee, Florida.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, as normal. And you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show with our producer, Glenn, is on.
Hey, I'm busy,
Yay!
guys. I am preparing for the cruise with Philip, so I'm busy.
Yeah,
you guys
we won't
are
talk
gonna
to Glenn.
have...
Don't talk to me. I am busy. I am already on vacation. Philip and I were just
Glenn
talking
has
about
senioritis for sure.
how much
Glenn
we're going
is
to
all
drink.
night. There's been some senioritis about this cruise. I'm so bummed I'm not going. Somebody's got to stay and work horses. Me. But you guys are going to have a great time. And I can't wait because I do get to see the group before. I should get it before and after. I'm going to be able to come down and see you guys before you get on the boat. So,
well, 2
there
weeks
should be a
from
before
today,
and
as
after.
we're recording this, we'll be in the dining room eating our final dinner together, ready to go party.
I love
All
it.
right.
That's
After a
so
full day at Key West. So Philip's already going to be under the table.
It'll be his last day of vacation.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So I'm super excited for you guys and bummed I'm going to stay and work, but that's going to be great. And Phil, how are things? What's going on in Canada?
We are having a terrible winter, to be honest with you. So I don't like to talk about it a lot, but there's been some very cold, extended periods of very cold weather, a lot of snow, and just, it's not been very fun. So
Is this when I have to zip it that we're having?
yeah, we don't like to talk about the weather with each other too much.
No, you don't.
I'm getting through it, and I'm ready for vacation, and all of that. So
I know you're going to be down for the 5-star. We have the 5-star here next week, which is going to be great fun. This week, we actually have our neighborhood horse show. So I'm quite busy this week, and Follow Me is doing his second level. It's his debut. We'll see how it goes. We'll see. We're a little green, but it'll be good. Again, sometimes we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it with Annie and our tip today. But you got to go sometimes. You got to go to the show. And,
I mean, all shows. Some of the purpose of a horse show is not to win, but to get experience.
Yep, and
get miles under the belt, and
exactly.
and so it's not always about blue or red ribbons. However you look at it,
Right.
it's it's developing horses so that they can get those top scores and those top ribbons later on in their life, and just getting miles under the belt.
Yep.
No horse is great at a horse show all the time, every time. So
no, and you got to take him, and it's not fun. I mean, I can't say it's great fun. He actually was pretty darn good down here, but here in our neighborhood in White Fences, the walk from our barn to the horse show is about a mile, so one way. So you see a lot in a mile. You walk by garbage cans and birds and
crazy birds,
crazy
those cattle
trucks
egrets and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard down here. I mean, it takes a special horse to be able to sort of do it. So we do it safely. I still have have him on a line to go down there. So we safely make it to the horse show, and it's a positive experience. And so he was quite good today, and his schooling a lot better than last year. Last year we was not as productive as today. So that was a good start. So yeah, it's all good. It's good. And it's crazy to think it's February and we're starting, but that's what we are doing, is trying to get some miles and be a good boy at a horse show. So we've got that going on here this week, which is fun. So we're moving along, and I'm doing lessons, and I mean, we're full steam ahead here, which is great fun. So yeah, but
I think the World Cup circuit is well underway, right? I think Laura Graves had two pretty good rides last weekend, right?
Yeah, she broke the global record. I don't have the score up, but she had a lovely, lovely ride, and so super. We always cheer Laura on, and next week's the 5-star. So it was really
Yeah, it's
it's
getting
coming
serious,
along.
right? It's
Getting
getting serious
serious,
for these
yeah,
competitors. Yeah,
yeah, which is
I
great.
really like it. Yeah, I think there's
So
a few people hoping to go to the final in Paris. That's where it's at this
yeah,
year, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely. So should be fun. Well, Phil, we've got a great group of guests. So why don't we get started? After this commercial break, we're going to come back with Annie Cizadlo. She is a S judge and a trainer and rider, and she's great. So I hope you enjoy the interview.
Hi, Glenn the Geek here. Choose Kentucky Performance Product Supplements because the horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. This week, I want to speak with you about Elevate Maintenance Powder. Horses consuming limited grass due to a busy competition schedule or because of diet restrictions may not be getting enough natural vitamin E. Horses in rigorous training, seniors, broodmares, and stallions often require additional levels of vitamin E to meet their needs. When you need a supplement with natural vitamin E, choose Elevate Maintenance Powder. Affordable, effective, and research proven, Elevate Maintenance Powder's vitamin E is nature's most powerful antioxidant, protecting your horse on the cellular level. Elevate Maintenance Powder supports the strong immune system and healthy muscle function necessary for top performance. It's affordable and easy to feed, and you can learn more about this and all their products at kppusa.com. That's Kentucky Performance Products at kppusa.com.
Well, tonight we are so happy to have Annie Cizadlo. She is a S judge. She's assistant trainer to Robert Dover, FEI rider and trainer as well. Annie, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Reese. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, we are too. And you and I were busy, down here in Florida. We are already starting to show, which is crazy. We were both schooling at the horse show today. So we wanted to talk to you tonight about 5 or 6 things that as a judge and a trainer that people can work on. What like the worst things you see or things you think when you're sitting in that judge's booth, come on, guys, you can do this. So take it away. What are some things that we can make better for horse shows?
So one of the first things that I want people to understand, especially like lower level kind of adult amateurs or even, mid-level adult amateurs, is that, even though the tests are divided into segments and like the main thing, for example, at the beginning of almost every test, the first level and above is either a lengthened trot or a medium trot or an extended trot. That's the basic thing that we want to see you do, and obviously we want to see that happen. But a lot of what we put into our reasoning when we do come up with a final score for that movement includes what they teach us in judge school is the modifiers. And so the modifiers are things like, how did you ride through the turn at C? And how did you ride through the corner before the extended trot? And how did you ride through the corner at the end of the extended trot? And so it's not just the extended trot that we're scoring. It's kind of how did you get in and how did you get out? And when I'm judging, there's a lot of times when I see a horse do probably what would be like an 8 or maybe even an 8.5 extended trot, and then they blast through the corner at the end of it with no down transition and no organization. And therefore, we have to pull that score down, sometimes even to a 6.5, depending on how disorganized the rest of it was. So one of the main things that I wanted to do, and this is why I'm starting with this tonight, is I want people to realize that what we really want to see is an organized test. Even if it's not the most brilliant mover or the most brilliant extended whatever, we'd like to see you actually make a nice turn at C. We'd like to see you go into the corner. We'd like to see a transition that goes up into the extended trot, a transition that comes back out of the extended trot, and then another corner. And that's a lot of pieces for one movement. And I think that a lot of times riders come in and they just want to give us this brilliant movement without any attention to the details before and after. And I just don't know that they always realize that that's why their score isn't more than it is on the test.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I'm glad you brought that up, because just because it doesn't have a specific slot in the test score sheet doesn't mean that you close your eyes in between, right? Like I'm only going to open my eyes
Exactly.
for the parts that said, HXF, and the rest doesn't matter what happens. No, I mean, just because,
Right.
the whole thing, the whole harmony, the two transitions, the one in, the one out, the corners, I mean, it all gets judged, right? So
Yeah,
I think
it's
that the biggest thing that people don't work on is kind of the entirety of the test. I see a lot of people working away at their extended trot, but it's not, it's hardly ever connected to the previous movement or the next movement. And so then, when you go to show day, I'm on show day and I've got to do my test, and the in between bits are so scrambly and problematic that no judge can give a great score for the movements independent, of corners and transitions and things like this. So I'm glad you brought that up, and that's why, like, even though you own the most expensive, fanciest horse, a well-trained horse and a rider that's obviously practiced the test and knows how to make harmony is going to score better.
Definitely.
Whether you realize
That's
it or
definitely
not.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. And that leads me to actually my second point, in that oftentimes when I'm watching horses go around, I wonder how much the rider has actually practiced the test in its entirety in their training. Because a lot of times I'll see this horse come around a corner to do, say, a shoulder in or something like that, and the horse is kind of a little shocked that we're doing a shoulder in. And so, of course, those first three steps are a little, they kind of fall off the rail, and then they put their head up in the air. And then, about 2/3 of the way through the shoulder in, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that looks pretty nice. Had you been doing that from the beginning, this would have been an 8, but it kind of started as a mess and then turned into a beautiful movement. I can give you a little credit because it became nice, but because it wasn't nice start to finish, I can't give you the score that you could have had. And that being said, if the horse is surprised by every movement that comes up, that just detracts from the whole flow of everything. And I'm not saying that you should practice the test so much that the horse is anticipating, but there's a balance in there between the horse anticipating and the horse being shocked about what's coming up next.
Yeah, it's a fine line. As with most things, it's a fine line.
Yeah.
I see this a lot with half pass, that people come out of the corner a little disorganized, and then by the time they get to the center line, they've got a good half pass, and they, you know what I mean? Like, they try and do a whole diagonal, but I tell them, like, half pass across an entire diagonal doesn't occur until Grand Prix. So if you're doing St. George or anything below that, you've got to show a really proper, good half pass from the wall to the center line, or from the center line to the wall. Everything that happens after that half arena, who cares? You don't get to show that, right? Just because you can create a good half pass or a good shoulder in or travers, like we're talking about, eventually doesn't matter, right?
Right.
From step 1 that you could put the aids on till step 3 or 4, and then you've got to do something else, right? And so everybody always gives himself a lot of time. Like, I'll get to a good shoulder in, I'll get to a good travers, I'll get to a good half pass at some point. Well, just because you ride every day in a 60-meter ring, you've got to do that. You don't have 60 meters. You have 5 meters, 10 meters, whatever. You get into the movement, make a good transition into the movement, and then get out of the movement, make a transition to your small circle or something else, So, I mean, people get shocked by this, like, when they go from training a little bit to test riding, time is steps and time is of the essence. And getting into it, doing it well right away is really, really, really important.
Yeah, I just want to see what, Annie, when you say, and I think this is important because I hear so many people like, well, I don't practice the test because my horse anticipates. And so it kind of is a pet peeve of mine, because you do need to practice the test. Like, that is important if you're going to a horse show. So can we talk a little bit about that? I mean, yes, there's a balance.
Yes.
So, what do you think? I mean, I think that that's important that we talk about a bit.
Sure. And so I'm gonna like shift a little bit over to my trainer aspect of this. And, what I usually tell my students is if they say, well, I want to show second level this year, or I want to show third level this year, I say, okay, go through and look at all the trot movements in all of the third level tests. And if you look at all of the trot parts of the third level test, they're going to involve shoulder in, they're going to involve renvers, they're going to involve half pass, and each test goes, from a slightly different point to a slightly different point. And so what I tell my students is you should know basically what those movements are in all of those tests and be able to practice the segments as they're written in the test, so that you don't have to just do third level test 1 every single day, or don't just do third level test 3 every single day, but maybe one day practice the parts of third 1, and the next day practice the parts of third 3, and the next day practice the parts of third 2. And in the process, you're going to practice all of those tests, including the corners and the transitions in and the transitions out. And yet your horse will be familiar with the patterns, familiar enough with the patterns that he won't be surprised when he gets to the horse show, but yet he'll have to wait for you in order to, know which pattern he's riding on any given day. And so it's a good way to blend getting your practice in and yet not making your horse anticipate everything. And another thing that I tell my students to do, besides knowing the trot segments and knowing the canter segments of the test, but sometimes maybe riding like the canter part of it, come down the center line, because the tests are all written trot, walk, canter, in not the freestyles, but just the regular tests. And so if you do the canter segment of a test, finish it up by coming down the center line, halting at X, and then trot off and do the trot segment of the test, there you've done essentially the entire test that day, but you flipped it around so that your horse, you're taking away a little bit of that anticipation that your horse might have, yet you're still getting the opportunity to practice the test.
That's a great idea. I also, tell my students to sometimes do, I call it active riding of the test. And that may be add in a few circles, add in a halt, add in some things, but you're still practicing the general test, if that makes sense. So I do that too. That's another way I think that it's good. But if you're horse showing, you got to practice the test. I hate saying it that way but I think people really get into trouble because they never do the test. So that's my sense of that. So.
Yeah,
I agree.
I just think I wanted to add a little bit here. It's okay for your horse to anticipate. The problem is that if the rider is not, riding, making half halts, doing things, then the horse just does what he wants anyways. You know what I mean? Let's say for two big examples is leg yields. The horse starts to go a little sideways, and if the rider isn't riding and used to that feeling, then of course the horse kind of wanders around and does whatever it wants. Or in second level, when you have to make when you're walking and you have to pick up canter, I think from second level onwards, I think that movement sort of occurs. Well, you need to know how to make a half halt and just be ready. I always like the horse to anticipate a little bit, because then I have to use way less aid. I don't have to be like, canter now. I can just be like, just wait, and now canter. You know what I mean? So you can't just you can't just close your eyes and let the horse do what he wants. You have to be riding. And I say, if you're not picking up the reins from free walk or extended walk and preparing the horse to canter without allowing him to canter, then you're not really doing your job anyways, right? They say, well, I pick up my reins and the horse canters. Well, yes, that's what they do. They're smart. They learn patterns. So why don't you just make a little half halt, or like Rhys says, I'm going to pick up the reins and then I'm going to make a halt. And that's no problem to kind of practice it a little bit that way. So the rider has to be thinking and preparing and not letting the horse take over the whole test. And that's hard. It depends on your horse. And, with a little bit hotter horses, they're more, but that just requires a little bit of finesse and a little bit of quiet riding and a little bit of a plan, so. I think it's nice that they learn the pattern a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. And if I can add to that too, because that was another thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this interview, was that a lot of amateurs, at least the ones that I work with, have, pretty safe, relatively quiet horses that, do their job most of the time fairly well. And all of a sudden they get to the horse show, and every horse show has a little bit of an electric atmosphere to it, to a certain extent. Some horse shows are quieter than others, of course, and some are more exciting. And Reese, as we mentioned earlier, that there was this horse that went galloping past the show rings while we were on warm-up day. I'm very happy that didn't happen while one of my students was in the ring tomorrow doing her test. But that being said, those kinds of things can happen. And if I look at a lot of times my amateurs, as long as everything's really quiet and nothing's going on, they have no problem doing even their test patterns. But when the electricity of the show or the chaos of the loose horses running around or something comes into play, all of a sudden their horses get a little jazzed up, and now all of a sudden those half halts that they'd been avoiding having to practice because they just kept their horses a little bit lazy, all of a sudden now these jazzed up horses need a good half halt. And so I think what we were suggesting, like you were saying, if you have the horse anticipating just a little bit all the time anyway, it forces you as a rider to practice those half halts that you're going to need when you get to the show ring and that horse gets a little electric anyway. And therefore, you'll have the confidence that the half halt will really work. Because I've seen way too many horses come to the show and all of a sudden be a little hyped up, and the amateurs are just worried. They don't know where did this horse come from? This isn't the horse that I usually ride at home. And I always tell them, I'm like, well, no, it's at a horse show. They're not going to be exactly the way they were at home. But if you practice the test, you get them a little anticipatory at home, you learn how to really use those half halts and really ride them so you can ride whatever horse you have that day. If he's lazy because it's 110 degrees out, you'll know how to kick him up and make him go forward. And if he's a little electric because it's windy and there was a loose horse in the ring next to you, you'll know how to half halt them and make that work. And that ties back into what I was saying at the beginning, was try to ride an organized test. Just be able to do your pattern, don't forget to add in your half halts or jazz your horse up or whatever you may need to make the whole thing flow with an organized tinge to it.
Yeah. That takes show miles though over everything else. I mean, it just,
yes.
If you're showing three times a year, that's not going to happen for you. But, get out there, practice, go to different farms, get a lot of miles in the ring, and
yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of test riding, right? Just you have to be good at that too. If you want to be a serious competitor, it's, you can have great stuff at home, but you take them to a show, it can be completely different, and you got to be okay with that. And just practice.
Yes, absolutely.
True.
Absolutely.
It's true.
Absolutely.
It's true. Well, Annie, how are we doing on our list?
Well, that's like the only other thing that I really had that I wanted to point out is that, a lot of judges say this too, of course, that most of the tests at normal horse shows are judged from C. And so the C judge can only see certain aspects of the accuracy of those tests. So like, for example, if you don't halt directly at X, the C judge can't tell that unless you're quite a ways off of X, either before or after. For like 20-meter circles in training level, if they're at E or B or at the far end of the ring, if those circles are a little wide, the C judge can't really judge that. And another thing that we're taught in judge school is to try not to make comments on things that we can't clearly see. And so if we can't see that you came a little past X, we're not going to comment on the accuracy of that halt. We're going to comment on the straightness, which is something we have a great view at. Just like if you go to regionals or nationals and now you have a judge on the side, they can't tell that center line halt is necessarily straight, but they can tell if it's accurately at X and they can tell if it's square. And so they're going to give you a comment about the squareness or the balance or if the horse's mouth is open. The C judge can't tell if the horse's mouth is open when they're halted at X, but the judge at E and B sure have a great view of that. And so you have to remember too that make sure if you're going to go to nationals or regional championships that you need to be accurate, not just so that the C judge can see it, but so that the B and E judge can see it. And if you get your test back and you've been judged by a judge at C and a judge at E, and the judge at C gave you an 8 on your center line because we're just looking at straightness, and the judge at E gave you a 5 because your horse's mouth was open and he was sprawled all over the place and 10 feet past X. You have to remember that we're looking at different aspects of the quality of that movement, and therefore that can create a difference in scores on some particular movements. Now, when you're doing a 10-meter circle, the C judge and the E judge can basically see the majority of those of the same traits, and so those scores are probably going to be a little more together. But in certain aspects, in certain parts of certain tests, the E judge has a great view of a few aspects. The C judge has a differing view of the same aspects, and that sometimes will cause the scores on those particular movements to be different. And I just don't know that all lower level amateurs sort of realize, well, how could one judge give me an 8 and the other one give me a 5? Well, we're looking at different things. And, maybe the straightness was great, but the accuracy was terrible. And so that's how those kinds of things end up splitting the scores.
I think that is such an important thing you just said, because people
Yes.
do that all the time. And, this is
Yes.
what happens when, you also may have your video from, let's say my husband stands at A or whatever. You may have it from A, but you're getting one view. And so that's why there sometimes are a difference in scores. And I think that
Right.
that's really, really important point, because we all hear it. And as trainers are like, well, why is my score so low? And you're like, well, if you've seen it, from the side, it's a little different.
Right.
So I think that
Right.
is really important. Well, Annie, this was such awesome information. I can't thank you enough for coming on, and it is a busy weekend
Great.
for us here in Florida. But if anybody has any extra questions or wants to get a hold of you online, how do they do that?
So if you go to my website, you can just type in my name, which is ANNECIZADLO, and my website, AnnCizadlo.com, will come up, and on there you can find my email and my phone number. My cell phone number is 218-349-3452, and if you Google my website, you can find my email, and I'm available via phone, email, texting, anything. So give me a call. I'm happy to discuss anything with anyone on the phone. That'd be great.
That's awesome. So thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you this weekend.
Okay. Thanks.
Awesome.
We'll see you in the
Thanks,
showroom.
Annie. You got it.
All right.
Bye.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Well, we are so excited today to have our friend Heidi Basler back on the program. She came after her trip to nationals, and she is back. Heidi, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me again.
Well,
It's nice to have you. I like to catch up on what's going on, and it's good.
Well, we love it. So Heidi has actually been my roommate here in Florida for the last month. We've had so much fun. And Heidi, tell us a little bit about what you did and what you competed in last weekend.
Sure. Yeah. So I went to the Gold Coast Opener. It was a CDI. It's put on by the Gold Coast Dressage Association, the GMO down here in South Florida. And let's see, thinking back long ago, it's been 11 years since I had done a CDI. Reese and I had done Young Riders together, and then I did just a handful of CDIs in the open classes, but that was 11 years ago. So last weekend, I competed in the CDI for amateur classes, which I think are just a great program. They're fairly new, but all the Florida CDIs, and I believe the California ones and Tryon, they're all offering these classes. And I did have to do a little research on them because while I do work full-time in the corporate world, I work for Oracle as a consulting manager. I also teach lessons part-time, on the weekends and things like that. So by USES definitions, I'm not an amateur, but actually FEI runs different rules and has their own definitions. And so by FEI standards, which runs the CDIs, I am in fact an amateur because they go by the world ranking list. So anybody not on the world ranking list at the time of the show is actually eligible for the amateur classes. So I had a great experience last weekend. They're the same judges. They're run exactly the same way as your regular CDI open classes, usually scheduled pretty much the same way. So they run all the Pre-St. George classes in a row. But then it's a separate division for the amateurs. And I was really impressed, the quality of horses and riders in the division. There weren't as many in the class, but definitely still really good quality for the horses and riders. And I was really happy to have this option to get back into the bigger CDI ring without having to go through everything that's usually involved with competing in CDIs and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've seen this. It's about 2 years old, I think, and I have no idea why these classes aren't massive because it's
exactly.
a CDI, like it's prestigious. It's but nobody. There's people taking advantage of it, but the classes are so small. And then taking for example. Last week's show that had a Pre-St. George 1-star and a Pre-St. George 3-star. There's so many people in those classes, but I don't know, and even amateurs that would typically do a national Pre-St. George amateur class. You can bump it up a little bit, make it a little bit higher. I mean, if you're doing really well at those, I'm trying to get a couple of the Canadian CDI shows to offer these amateur classes. I don't know why they wouldn't, because it's more entries, but people got to enter these. I think it's it's a great option to be able to do these classes.
I agree, and I'm not sure if there's just maybe the word hasn't quite gotten out about them, or I think there is some confusion just about the rules, and because it is a different set of rules from USEF and your national amateur classes. But yeah, I think they're a great option. And the other really nice thing that I liked, I have an older horse. He's 19, but he's going strong and fit and likes to go out and show. So I was looking, for some, new goals for us to work towards. But also with his age, didn't want to do too much with him. But what was really nice with the amateur classes, you don't actually have to have an FEI passport, and those can get pretty expensive. And, with an older horse, I just didn't really want to invest in one at this time. But the amateur classes, if you're competing in your country of citizenship, you can enter the classes with just a USEF passport, which is about $50. All the same information in the passport. So your vet has to fill it out, and you have to have all your vaccinations and the record of everything. And it gets stamped by USEF, but it's much more economical. And I think it's a nice option. So I would hope it would open it up for more people that, maybe are interested, maybe have never done a CDI, but are interested in trying it, but, maybe don't want to jump into these huge classes right away, or just with their horse don't have the passport and everything. That this is an actual option that you can go with and be able to get into the ring.
No, and it's great, and it literally is a CDI. You have to jog, you have to present. Yep. It's all CDI rules. So it's really a cool option, and that's what Heidi and I were talking about. We're like, we really need to get the word out, and it is the way the rule is written right now, it is the current world ranking list for Grand Prix. So technically, by FEI standards, Philip and I are amateurs as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
But yeah, I mean, it's up to
currently-
each person where they want to
Yeah,
show and what their
exactly.
competition is and whatever. But I mean, it's
But I
great.
think that's
I
confusing.
know they held a CDI, the amateur division at Devon. So
Mhm.
you're like, I want to make a goal of riding at Devon in a CDI. You can do that.
Great, you can do that. Yeah, you
Right.
can
And
do
maybe
that.
you don't want to show against, some of the world ranked riders, even if it's in St. George or whatever. And you can, the option is there. So I think people should fill these classes. We always need support for CDIs, in Canada for sure, because, we have to have, but they're usually money losers because there's not enough entries and, shows have to support them one way or another. But, I think, having some big amateur classes in the CDIs would help support the show, and in, in an indirect way support the riders trying to qualify for WEG and, to have more CDIs, for people to have options to qualify for the big games. And, everybody should be involved. And, again, it's about fun. It's about setting goals. It's, so I think, let's get the
that's
word
great.
out, right? Let's tell
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about your experience. It was really cool. I got to go with Heidi and I got the armband and everything as well. And it was really a fun experience. So I'm
Did you do a good job of carrying her water and her
I
and her
tried.
boot polish
I
and,
mean,
were you a good groom?
fantastic.
I
Yeah,
tried.
yeah.
I tried.
Yep.
Lamode really
Help.
likes me. He likes the sugar I provided.
I know, helped keep the gray horse clean, but
Yeah.
also a lot of support and moral support for me as I got back into it. So I do appreciate having you there and having your help.
Got to have
for
your
sure.
team, man. Everybody's got to
That's
have their
right.
team. So it's really fun, and like you see, we are busy down here in Florida. We're rocking and rolling. So, well, Heidi, thank you so much, and we can't wait to have you back on to hear how you're I think doing it again in a couple weeks. So
I
we'll have
hope so, yeah. I'll have to fill you in.
yeah, exactly. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, guys.
This week's dressage training tip is brought to you by Total Saddle Fit, home of the shoulder relief girth at totalsaddlefit.com.
So, Phil, for this week's Total Saddle Fit tip of the week, we are going to talk a little bit about some things that have been going through the internet. But before we do that, we wanted to talk, like we do every week, about our favorite girths. And the biggest question I get every week is, or when I talk to people, do you guys really use those girths? And I say, we use them all day, every day on every horse. And that's true. I am a super fan of the Stretch Tech girth. I use those on both my horses. And I've also found a lot of horses right now, especially the stage of the youngsters sort of really gaining and having to use their core and lift up their sternum and lift up and use their abs. They sometimes get a little bit sore in their girth area. And let me tell you what, that Stretch Tech girth is amazing. I put it on and it does wonders for my horses. So I am such a fan of that. But as you know, Justin has great girths of all types, and they're in brown and black and all price points. So we are a super fan, and we really do use them, don't we, Phil?
Absolutely. And, not only do they help their backs, but they help the shoulder. I mean, it's called the shoulder relief girth. And so, I noticed the difference in the horses being able to move better, not being encumbered by the saddle riding up on the shoulders or falling way back. I mean, it just really does hold the saddle exactly where it should be. It gives me good balance so that I'm not falling behind the horse or all over the withers. And so I think I had a few students get these girths for Christmas, and they're just being introduced to the products, and they really love them. And I mean, it's totally worth it. It's totally worth the upgrade and the money to get a new girth, even if you're not, thinking like, okay, I don't really need a new girth. If you want to help your horse move better, do all the things that the horses need to do in their dressage training. The shoulder relief girth is amazing. So check it out at totalsaddlefit.com. And of course, you can always send Justin an email or a question via the website.
No, I love it. So Phil, we got a question online
Yeah, there's been a
Um,
lot of talk online
yep.
about a certain ride at a show that a lot of people, the video's been posted all over, and so we thought we could kind of cover this on the Dressage Radio Show in in kind of a positive manner that we like to do, and so do you have any opening comments or thoughts about this issue?
Well, I think the first thing is, and we've talked a lot about that on this show actually a little bit today, and that is number one, it's very hard to go to a horse show. It is not easy. It is not easy to put yourself out there. It is not easy to ride in front of the cameras. It is not easy to go to a big show. It happens here a lot in Florida. It's hard. And I think everybody who goes out, I think we strive, especially on the show, and Phil and I as trainers and riders, to work very, very hard to ride well. And I think we do not want to judge. We want to be positive in the sport. Everyone really, truly, there's very few people that go out every day and think, I want to ride badly. However, we do not condone pulling, yanking, kicking, whipping. That is not at all what we are here to do. And I think that we need to say that. And I think that is extremely important. But I do say I don't think people should be judged or bullied for what they do. I say the same, and just even in my barn, when people come for help or a lesson, they will be given respect, and they will be given all the help and respect that I can give them. So that would be the kind of my opening statement.
Yeah, I think those are all good
you know?
points. I mean, judges are paid to judge. I'm not
Right.
paid to judge. So, and stewards are paid to make sure the health and welfare of the horse is taken care of during a horse show. So that's also not my job. I think about this certain issue, and there's been a lot of misinformation out there
That's
on
right.
the internet because people, get on their computers and write all kinds of stuff. So I think, I've seen a few things that I don't think are very accurate about people's comments and, what they've been reporting on blogs and all of this things. So I think that's also a bit of a problem. When people get in, wrapped up in the whirlwind, the hurricane that is the internet these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's great to have, these topics of discussion, and we like to discuss these things, in generalized terms, and not to, get on there and tear people down, because anybody who is riding, showing, and supporting the dressage community is important and valuable to us, and we don't want to see the sport be diminished and taken away, and people not wanting to ride in public because they're afraid of being on video and having people comment and stuff like that. So it takes a brave person to go out there and go to a horse show. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of my
Right.
thoughts on the topic. And and if we speak in generalized terms, I think one thing that they have in Europe that they don't have here in North America that I do think should be implemented is riders and horses, qualifying with scores to be able to move up through the levels. I think that's important. I think that if this is something positive that can come out of this discussion and this topic, is that maybe rule makers will think about implementing this policy so that in the future, people will have to earn scores through the levels to be able to go up to the next level, next level,
Right.
next
And
level, right?
in Europe, it is basically you have to earn so many points, right, before you
Yeah.
go to the next level. So you can't just go. In North America, anyone could go enter a Grand Prix, or an I2 or whatever. You can enter it without any repercussions. A CDI is different, right? It's not as easy. You can still do it. But you can go do that. You can purchase a horse and you can go ride. In Europe, you cannot do that. You have to, no matter what you do, you have to start at a certain point and get points to go to the next
To
level.
move up. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
think
To move up.
that's a wonderful system. And
Mhm.
again, if you're showing at fourth level, for instance, you've earned that, right? And
That's
you've
right.
done the homework, and you've ridden, and you've got the scores, and I think that's something that we should look at implementing in North America, so that it's a really an accomplishment to get up there, and I think that's good. I try to implement that policy with my students to
Yep.
even when they buy schoolmasters and they have a really well trained horse, to say, let's do some easy levels, let's get some great scores, let's win some classes, let's do that, because that's also fun, right?
Yes,
and then you really feel like, okay, now I'm at this level.
Yep.
It's a challenge, and I've
Done
really
well.
worked on this, and I've really earned that, and so I think that's a good policy, and that's what I have a little bit with my own riding program and my own philosophy with my own horses. They start at a lower level that might be a little bit easy, and but it's hard to ride at any level, I think, because for sure you've got to polish, even if it's something like a leg yield or a lengthening, and the horse already knows half pass and extensions. You've really got to polish each movement and really, get the horse on your aids, on your seat and your leg, and I think that can be fun too. I mean, even if it's not very prestigious to ride at first level, but I like to do it to make sure that the basics are there and that everything works for me. So maybe with every situation, I just really try and focus on what is the issue, what is the problem, how can we fix it, and move forward with it, and not. It's so detrimental to be tearing down our sport that needs more participation and more sponsors and more people looking at it as a good expression of something. As a sport,
Yeah,
so
agreed. And I think there's two other points I wanted to make quickly, and that is, you can never judge a situation from
it's just
a video
a
at a horse show.
snapshot, right?
It's
I always
a
think
snapshot.
like a picture on the internet, or even a video of someone showing at a class. I mean, I'm sure that these situations that people are like, this is what I want out there for people to see. This was not a good day for me. I don't want that to be out there and for everybody to be judging it as if it's how I do things every day. You don't know that, right? There's so much information that's not included in a picture,
and you don't know
or
the
a
trainer,
video.
And you don't know if the trainer said, hey, I don't think you should do this, and the owner said, well, I think I'm ready, I'm going to do it. And eventing, also the trainers have a little bit more power with what level you can enter. Again, in America or North America, you can enter, and your trainer may not want you to show, and you still can do it. So it's hard to judge anybody or anything.
Hard to judge,
on that. And I also am I am a fan of buying schooled horses. I like people to have schoolmasters. If you can do it, I always say, for whatever money you have, you should buy the best schooled horse that you can afford, because they all cost the same. But just like anything, if you buy a schooled horse, it takes a long time and a lot of work to learn how to ride that horse. It's very similar. I mean, this analogy is of a car, but I know how to drive a car, but I don't know how to drive a Ferrari. I don't know how to do it. I'm sure there's very similar things to my truck, but I don't know how to drive that. So I'm going to get into that Ferrari, and there's going to be some grinding of clutches and disaster situations until I know how to drive that car, if I ever drove a Ferrari, which, of course, let's be real, people, I have horses and I'm never driving a Ferrari. But if that's the analogy, right? And so I do think it's important, but just because it takes a long time to learn how to ride those horses. It's hard. It's very hard. So even for a professional rider, it takes a long time. Every horse is a little different and that stuff. So, but I do feel that buying a horse that knows is important. I think that that's good if you can do it. So that was my sort of final point, is buy a horse that has as much schooling as possible. So, so anyways.
So let's keep it positive and, and
agreed.
Not so judgmental, and the internet can be wonderful, and we want to be able to watch these rides from these big shows while at home, and I'm sitting here in Canada, and there's lots of great horse shows going on, and I want to be able to watch these, and so
I think
not every ride is going to be great and inspiring, but
absolutely, absolutely. So
I don't want I don't want them not to have horse shows.
Right. And we like having the the webcams. Those are good. Those are helpful. So we hope that helps. That's Phil and I actually took a
That's
little
our
bit of
thoughts,
time to talk about it before we talked on air, but we hope that helps. And as always, we love email and Facebook shout outs. Please do it anytime. And you can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter @Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me at the moment is on Facebook, or you can email me at philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week for allowing us to put on a good show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows in the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we will talk to you next week.